Here we go. Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the MIRTH Web Show. My name is David Batterina, and for the next hour, I will be your host through the mayhem and insanity of exploring all things creativity. The show exists to help you, the creator, connect with fans, friends, and peers by showcasing not just your work, but your brain, your creative process, and your personality. It also exists because I like to mess with people, so like, subscribe, hit the bell. We're streaming Tuesdays and Thursdays and some group shows, first one this Saturday. Over the next hour, expect some deep conversation, some lighthearted fun, and prying open the creative brain of my very, very special guest, Miss Lana Orndorff. Orndorff, right?
Orndorff.
Okay. Got it. All right. That's the toughest part of the night for me, to be honest.
You're good.
So, hey, we had some technical difficulties. Just made it right under the wire. But we're here. Everything's cool. And so how are you? Let's start there.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm about an hour behind you because I'm in Chicago, so
okay.
It's a little earlier here for me. But yeah, I worked all day, but glad to be here.
All right, good. Well, it's now time to just like relax, kick back, and just have a good conversation. It's fun and all that kind of stuff. You have seen the show. You know how this goes. I've got to ask you some this or that questions because I figured it's just a nice, quick, easy way for everybody to get to know you and all that. So we're going to start with that. Just kind of run down those, and then we'll just move on to whatever from there. So we'll go for about a minute or so. You ready?
Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right. Let's poke the brain and see what happens. First one I'm going to ask you. I'm not even going to start the timer. I'm going to ask this question to everybody now. So is it hot air balloon? Is it homemade hot air balloon or janky submarine for you?
Homemade hot air balloon.
Oh man, one of those. I know. It's all right.
Something about being like under the water. Like I don't know.
You know what? For a lot of people, it's water and space. Like it's just those are the two no's. Yeah, I get it. All right, so here we go. Let me ask a bunch of just rapid fire. Here we go. Fantasy or sci-fi?
Sci-fi.
Sci-fi, nice. Camping or a hotel?
Hotel.
Yep. Quiet morning or quiet night?
Quiet morning.
Quiet morning. Own a castle or own a tank?
Castle.
Let's see. Polka or death metal?
Death metal.
Nice. Christina or Britney?
Ooh, Britney.
It's Britney. Elvis or the Beatles?
Ooh, Beatles.
Beatles. Nice. We're running through these. All right. Dwarves or elves?
Dwarves.
Dwarves it is. Haunted house or enchanted forest?
Enchanted forest.
All right. Rather have a personal driver or a personal chef?
Personal chef.
Personal chef. And let's see, mind reading or shape-shifting?
Shape-shifting.
Shape-shifting. Last one, let's go with time loop or parallel universe?
Parallel universe.
Parallel universe. As a sci-fi person, sci-fi over fantasy. What is it you like about sci-fi over fantasy?
Sci-fi's rooted in the real world, which I'm just like much more comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's kind of why I'm more drawn to sci-fi.
Right. Do you like urban fantasy? You do like just like supernatural type?
Yeah. Like, I definitely like some of that, but I mean, if I was thinking about the question as far as like writing goes. And
sure.
But as far as watching too, I think.
Yeah. For me, like there's just a good sci-fi movie. It just like it kind of hits different. Like I love Conan and like all that stuff, but you know when you get like Interstellar and all that, like that's like such a like a homey kind of genre for me to watch and all that. So what I'm gonna do is give you 30 seconds. Floor is gonna be yours, and just introduce and talk about whatever you want to talk about. Right. So just who are you? Let's just start with that and just go.
My name's Lana Orndorff. I am a writer, author. I have published 2 novels. Missing Colors was my debut. It came out in 2020, like peak pandemic, like August 2020. Nobody was going to bookstores. It was kind of it was a time. And then 2 years later, I published The Narrative of Mary James. I also work at a university right now. I'm a writing specialist, so my job is to help those first-year students learn and curate their writing skills, which I love. That's what I was doing all day today. I have a I have a 6-year-old. He will be 7 soon. And yeah, I love talking to people and traveling and all things creativity. So when you opened up this opportunity, I was like, I have some thoughts on creativity.
Oh, absolutely. I know. And we connected briefly on Twitter about that. And it's like, yes, especially I'm just intrigued working with those bright-eyed, bushy-tailed students. They're so innocent. What is that like? What is that like? Just give me like, just what's like a typical interaction or typical day with with them like?
It's so interesting because we just started fall term. So I've got a whole new batch of, 18, 19-year-olds starting college for the first time.
Wow.
And they're all coming in with like different high school experiences. Most of them are coming in from like the Chicago public schools. But they all had different experiences depending on where they went. And so kind of my job, since I'm not an instructor, I really get to know them personally. So I start out with just getting to know them as people, knowing where they're coming from as far as their home lives, their past school experiences. And then I start to ask questions like, how do you feel about writing? And saying, I hate it or I don't love it is perfectly acceptable because they may have not been taught to make it fun or to make it accessible,
Absolutely.
So my goal is to help them try to like find some of that or reduce the anxiety that comes with writing and getting those things on paper.
Do you work them through like fiction storytelling? Do you work them through journaling? Like how does it typically manifest?
Usually because it's not a liberal arts college, it's more like a career-based college. So it's all kind of a means to an end. We don't have creative writing majors or English majors even, but everybody has to take English classes their first year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a means to an end. So I want to make it fun, but I also want to make sure that they're getting their assignments done as painlessly as possible. So I am a huge like free writing person.
Okay.
I'm a journaler, so I advocate for that. I teach them how to do it. Actually, I'm in my spare time create and make like journals. So like this is one I made for my son and then started selling it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Prompt journal. But for my students, I show them kind of ways to reduce their anxiety about how do you get started without staring at a blank screen for 20 minutes. Which, by the way, just never stare at a blank screen for 20 minutes.
More than students need help with that, let me tell you. Some people I know that have multiple books out that'll sit there and stare at the blank screen, and how to avoid that is definitely key. Interesting.
So I have tips and tricks for that. I did my master's thesis on free writing, so I have some different things that I teach them to kind of take that anxiety away.
Right.
And once we do that, then they kind of start opening up and they show me their essays that they're working on. And again, I'm not their teacher, I'm not grading it. So I just want to see their works in progress.
Yep.
Today, for example, I gave a lesson on introductory paragraphs. And then a lot of students who came to me were like, just look at this introductory paragraph and tell me if I followed those steps correctly. So
you mentioned this word a couple times, and just the anxiety over writing. And so like how does that show itself? Like, how do you see, like, what does that look like to you?
For my students specifically, but I think that this is very general. There's a lot of like paralysis that comes with that anxiety. You get blank page syndrome, which is like a real thing. The longer you stare at a blank page, the less or the harder it is to get words on it.
Right.
So paralysis for some, it can come from like writing and then rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, which as people who have books out, we know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like imposter syndrome type things, like I'm not good enough to do this, like that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely. So yeah, for students that can manifest in like, I'm just not going to turn it in because I don't think it's good enough.
Right.
Which is not ideal. So.
Well, interesting. Yeah, that's something. The imposter syndrome itself is something that I'm just really kind of fascinated by, just like as an exploration topic. Only because after reading it and digging into just like they've done studies on people and everything else and like surveys and interviews and whatever, and then when you start to realize that quite literally every profession has it.
Yes.
Surgeons, it's like huge in terms of like the medical field, where they're just and like I can't imagine sitting there on an operating table and like the surgeon's like I'm just like I'm not good enough, like I'm having a bad day, I'm not good enough to do this. Like you imagine how like horrifying it's like, please don't have imposter syndrome, but like also don't be like the cockiest person ever, like there's a balance.
Maybe don't say those words out loud to the person you're
right. Right. Yeah.
Like, that's not your audience.
You just keep that to yourself, like I've had a terrible day, just like throwing stuff. Yeah, no, don't need that at all. That's fascinating. I mean, so you get to work with some younger people on that. Now, what about you on your own writing? So would you say, just before I start asking some of the creativity stuff, are you mostly just like nonfiction? Are you mostly journaling? Like what's the majority of your writing?
I do a lot of journaling. But when I'm like working on something that I'm actually trying to like produce and put out into the world, it's mostly fiction, but I have started to dabble in some nonfiction and some like
Nice.
travel writing and things like that.
Excellent. All right, that's good. So let me start. Yeah, this is about where it is. Jacqueline just said the task feels overwhelming for me, so I just avoid it. Yeah, like that's yeah, there it is. There it is in a nutshell. So I asked this question of everybody when I say creative process, and I guess let's just focus on like the fiction part of it, right? Okay. When I say creative process, what's the first thing that pops in your head when you hear that phrase?
Are we talking about like novel wise?
Yeah, just writing and you.
Usually when I'm starting a novel or something that will become a novel, I start with conversations that I cannot get out of my head. It's kind of, how you have an argument with somebody and then like 3 days later you think of the perfect comeback.
I should have said that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, then I just put it down in books and I'm like, this is perfect. But yeah, it starts with like kind of conversations I can't get out of my head, and then I kind of work from there. But also I do start with a lot of like free writing, just kind of that stream of conscious writing, just getting things out. And then I can kind of revise and take it from there.
So when you've got a blank page in front of you and it's been a minute or two, and then you're like, okay, I need to kick into like a free writing gear. Is that like a typical?
Yeah. Or kick into free writing gear, or if it's been more than 5 minutes, and this is like the rule that I'm giving right now. If it's been more than 5 minutes and you just like can't get words on the page, get up and do something else. Like go for a walk, do jumping jacks, like do some yoga, whatever, like get your body moving and then come back to it.
Right. Yeah, Logan mentioned the moment it becomes overwhelming is the moment the brain stops braining. Yeah, my brain stops braining from time to time for sure. There's that. So 5-minute rule. I like, this is good advice. So 5-minute rule, if it's blank and you're just sitting there, go shake it up a little bit, do some burpees, whatever.
Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah. No, that's good too. Are you do you find yourself to be more creative? I asked this as nocturnal, diurnal, or crepuscular. Are you a morning writer, an afternoon writer, an evening writer?
Well, I have a 6-year-old, so I have to kind of like, I kind of at this moment in my life just shove writing in wherever I can.
Yeah.
I'm not an early morning writer for sure. Like regardless of my child, I like slow mornings. I like to sip my coffee and like not use my brain for a very long time. And then at night, I'm just so tired. I'm going to use a phrase, my brain stops braining. And so I think during the day is when I'm like at my peak. Like the sun is usually out. I've had my slow morning. So that's when I'm ready. And I've got an hour to an hour and a half max at a time before I need to like step away.
So you've come to know your creative process in terms of like, okay, if it's a blank page for 5 minutes, I'm going to go do something. I've got about an hour and a half to work with. See, that's really good. I think a lot of people, a lot of authors in particular, don't even know what their creative process is. Like they
Mhm.
just don't have it. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I just try to get words whenever I can get words. And I've always found that just a little bit of a little bit of a ritual to it tends to help, or at least snaps you into that mode a little bit easier, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
do you have anything for you that's sort of like, okay, you're sitting down, you're getting ready to write particular beverage or like something or music or anything that's like just to get you in that mindset? Do you have anything like that?
Not really, which I think is weird. Actually, I think most people do have something like that. Like I write with zero music, which is like I think insane. um, but if it has words, I'm just gonna start singing the words or typing the words.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually write mostly in silence or just like with people around and I'm just ignoring them.
Mhm.
Um, but I would prefer to write in silence.
Do you typically write at home, or do you like, are you able to, can you be a coffee shop writer if you need to?
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
like it?
Yeah, I don't mind it. And like we live in the city, so we've got coffee shops within walking distance.
You
Like,
got stuff everywhere. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I found that's one of the things, like, I kinda got used to doing that. There was just this one particular coffee place, and my debut novel was December 2020, so everything was getting worked on, and then that hit, and it was like, I was finishing it. I'm like, when all of the COVID stuff was going on was pretty much when I was finishing, like, going through all my edits and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, my dad was given just like a couple months to live. Like it was a really nuts, like a bonkers year for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so like I totally get that. That I noticed that when you mentioned it, and you're like 2020. I'm like, yeah, that was a wild time for a book to be out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like to watch. It's not so much like interacting, but if I write like at a coffee shop, I just want to watch people go by. And so when it's that page and I'm thinking about the words and maybe it has been 5 minutes, it helps me to just look up and see some people coming and going, eavesdrop on a conversation or two, just like see the interactions. It's sort of like, I guess that's the thing that I just do after 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's
Your
weird.
brain's just like
I
going
never
somewhere
thought of it
else.
that way, but yeah, I suppose so. Oh, that's interesting. Um, are you a planner, or do you do your best work just like kind of spontaneously?
Full on pantster. Like
Yeah,
I cannot plan. It bores me. And like then I start like writing a really boring outline.
right.
It's yeah.
So
I admire plotters.
you said that it starts with like a conversation. So can you just describe that for me? Like if you're just an idea happens, what
Mhm.
do how does that work? How do you go from the spark of a neuron to,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to start putting a story down? Like what's the in between?
Um, so since I am a total panster, I just usually will write that conversation down, like just the dialogue to get it out of my head. And then I start to build around that. So I start to then build like who are these characters? What's their relationship to one another? Where are they? All of those things. It's really like, have you ever seen those animations where they start with like a skeleton and they build out the muscles and
Yeah.
then like that's kind of how it feels sometimes.
Hmm.
Like I layer.
Right. Start with the bones and then add the other stuff and then finish it as you go. That's
Yeah.
funny because like I have many times I've started a story or whatever just like that. There's like a character in my head that I'm just picturing. I'm like, well, that's compelling. Let me put somebody else in there and then listen to what their conversation is like. Let me put a couple of lines like that down. What does this person look like? What does that person look like? Where are they? Et cetera, et cetera. And then before you know it, you've got a scene.
There you
Now, scene, I start to get like, there's more that you can kind of grow from there. Have you always been that way? Is that like how it just presents itself to you?
Yes.
Oh, great. That's the creative brain at work. That's really cool.
Mm.
Um, when was the last time you'd started something that was like that conversation based starting point?
Um, I was this summer I've been working on mostly on nonfiction. So
Mhm.
it's based on some travel stories and travel experiences that I had. So that process was a little different because I was just kind of like remembering things that actually happened. Um, but I'm trying to think about the last time that I was working on some fiction. Um, it was probably about 6 months ago.
Hmm.
Um, that I was working on something, and I have this character in my head for a book. She's kind of based on Wednesday Addams.
Okay.
But so my writers group and we've been calling her not Wednesday because she's not Wednesday. And I put her as like a college student in a dorm with like a Barbie type character.
Okay.
Kind of just like,
Play them off each other for sure.
yeah, exactly. So I kind of went your method where I had these characters and popped them in a room
Yep.
together to see what was going on. Um, but yeah, I can't remember the last time I was doing like the conversation
Right.
part.
And would you write that just like separately? Like, just let me just write down this conversation, and this kind of gives me a feeling of the characters, and now I'm going to write the story separate. Like, it may or may not make it in there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've done the same exact thing. I've actually written a character just sitting down on a stool with a camera in front of him, like a documentary,
Oh,
and then
cool.
just random questions, and the character has to answer the questions as it, like, and I'm writing the whole scene, he's fidgeting or whatever else, and then just like, yeah, I guess like this is the answer, just like awkward, but it helped me get the mannerisms of the character down more than anything else. And that's, so I see it like a movie typically, and it sounds like you've got a very similar, like, oh, they're talking today. So let me go
Yeah.
write something down. um that's pretty neat. And so how is it different, how is it different creatively working on the nonfiction though?
The nonfiction is different. I do have that kind of like layering process with nonfiction, but I'm at the point right now where I'm just kind of telling myself the stories and remembering them.
Mhm.
And like they're terrible. I would never let anybody see this, but that's what rough drafts are for.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, it's way more telling. I'm not worrying about the beauty of the language and the descriptions
For
of
sure.
this. After I tell myself the stories, I'm going to go back through my travel journals, and because I have all my notes,
Mm.
and then kind of like start layering and filling it out with things that I actually wrote back then about it, and then it's going to be creative nonfiction. Then I'll start to kind of fill it out with more description and more scenes and
Excellent.
conversations that kind of happened.
Right. Right. Yeah, I did. My first creative nonfiction is out November 1st, and I wrote that one with two other people, so two co-authors, but they didn't actually. It wasn't. They spoke their parts, and then I had to transcribe and then weave in like a narrative and things like that. And it was such a vastly different process than what I'm used to for that sort of thing. Because in nonfiction, it's like it's more of like, okay, there's a point that I'm trying to get across here that I need to focus on and stay focused on and all that. And you're right, like a little bit less on the flowy prose or whatever, and a little bit more of the meat on it, because it's like self-help-ish,
Mm,
that kind of stuff. So it gets a little bit trickier. But same thing for you. It's just like write it whenever you can write it, right? Like,
yeah.
yep, and then journals at hand, and so you dig back in for your notes and all that to just sort of fill it all out. How far in the process for this one are you?
Um, I've been procrastinating. I have one more story that I need to tell myself. Um, and that's just kind of been sitting there. And then the others are at various stages of completion. Like, because one of them, this actually started because one of the stories was published in part in a travel magazine several years ago.
Nice.
But it was a close to a 4,000 word story, and they were like, "Great, make it 1,000 words." I was like, "Oh,"
Oh,
which I did. I just like
cool.
shoved it all in there.
Yeah.
It's fine, but like there is like way more to the story. So I was like, well, what if I just started developing some of these stories as like kind of an anthology? Because I've been I had some pretty cool travel stories, and I was like, I'd
Yeah,
like to share these.
nice. Um, I want you to recall a time, whether it was fiction or nonfiction or what have you, just where you felt like you were firing on all creative cylinders.
Mm.
And what did life look like for you then, and what kind of output was it? Like, just describe that feeling for me through your eyes.
Um, for me, like I don't know if this was the last time, but one time that definitely sticks out in my mind is when I was working on my second novel. Um, and that novel is actually a loose prequel to the first one because readers were like, I would like to know more about these characters over here.
Of course.
We need more. So I was like, okay, I've already kind of created these characters, but I was sitting there one night and I was writing this scene, and something that I didn't even realize about this character, it wasn't something I planned, it wasn't something I meant to do or wanted. It was just like, it was almost like the character of Mary, she told me this information about her.
Right.
And can I curse?
Sure.
Great. I was like, holy shit, this makes so much sense. Because of all our technical difficulties, I forgot to ask you that. Like, before.
It's all good. I mean, as long as it's not like every other word's an MF, like, we're fine.
Okay, cool. But yeah, so one of my characters, I did not know that she was a cutter until she told me she was. And it's this huge part of her character, and I had no idea. I did not plan it. It wasn't something that I personally have experience with, but like I don't think I've ever had like a character tell me something so personal that I did not plan for them. Like, which saying that out loud kind of makes me sound insane, but
No, I get it though. I get it. Your character spoke to you. It's
yeah,
something about it. Yeah. Look, there's something to be said for just like that sort of creative intuition, so to speak, where you may not, it's on a subconscious level somewhere in your brain, those things started to connect, and it was loud enough that it just popped up over the surface enough for you to catch it and be like, okay, I got to add that in. Like, that's a thing.
Mhm.
That's a, I mean, that's a very cool way to be creative too, is to just sort of let that stuff happen, let those neurons just kind of fire. For me, it's that time where, like, I'm driving long drives, if it's like a couple hours or whatever else, I just think through, just think
Yeah,
about characters, think through the story, and eventually some things pop up that totally and completely unexpected. I had a couple of those moments as I was just on a 15-minute drive today. I'm not going to say what they were out loud, but just some weird stuff. But like, at the same time, I'm like, I might actually need to add that into a story somewhere like that. I can fit that. That's really cool. I can work with this, So it's neat that you have that you can have that happen, and sort of recognize it as such. Like, wow, this just came out of nowhere,
yeah,
in. That's pretty cool. And you added that. Is that like a major part of the story? And
it is. It was something that was like ended up being really important to her character, and it wasn't something I planned at all.
right. How often does that happen for you?
Um, I think that's the biggest moment I've had like that, but it does happen a lot where I'm just like, I didn't control anything that these characters were doing. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I had a reader who was like basically like live texting me as she was reading one of my
Okay.
books, and she was like, "What's going to happen? Better like what I think is going to happen better not be about to happen." I was like, "Oh shoot, that's really going to happen."
Right.
And I watched it happen, and she was like, "I can't believe you did that." I was like, "I didn't do it. I'm so sorry. I didn't do it."
That's good. No, that's good. Do you do beta readers for your work?
I do.
Yep. So
Yeah,
do you have a group?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. How's that worked for you?
It's worked really well, actually. So I have an amazing writers group that I met through Instagram, and we've been together for almost 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
Like consistently. And so we've been with each other through some publications, through querying, through all sorts of steps. And so they're my first beta readers.
Nice. Oh, that's good too. What about a moment where you were trying to create and it was a great struggle? Or the words weren't happening, or you just felt like this is just not, just one of those times in your life or whatever. What did it look like, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, no, that's a big question. I have been struggling to write a little bit the last few months.
Mhm.
My father passed away in May.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yep.
Thank you. And it kind of just, on top of the logistics of, dealing with all that comes with that.
Oh yeah.
So my time was less my own at certain times. I was just kind of feeling emotionally drained, and I didn't feel like talking to a lot of people, and my characters even.
Yeah.
And so that's why I kind of started to gravitate toward the creative nonfiction, where it's like I don't have to create anybody or anything. I don't have to deal with their drama. I'm just like writing down my own stories. And so I kind of use that as a way to keep writing when I didn't feel like writing or didn't feel like creating.
Right.
So I think I'm slowly moving away from that, but it's when I'm emotionally drained, and especially because I write some fairly intensely emotional things, it's very hard to give my characters the attention that they need, and I have to just be okay with that, because if I force it, then I'm gonna write things that aren't.
No, you should always be giving yourself some grace on that as a creative in particular, because like you never know when something's going to come out of nowhere and it just throws everything off the rails. So I have written through grief, a couple times, and it's really difficult. I went through a period of almost, like a solid year and a half where I just didn't want to put anything down. And that's that in and of its grief in and of itself is just like a completely separate process, obviously, that's wildly different from one person to the next. And so, but trying to be a creative person during that, I had this conversation with Sam on the very first episode, because he had a similar experience, right? And where we talked about how you almost, there's a little bit of a feeling of almost guilt when you're trying to create, something that's just like it's fiction, it's creative, that's typically a joyful process. And it's like I don't feel like I should be happy, like doing so. I think that giving yourself grace is really, really important, in that case. And I get you. So you tend to have skills that I think some authors probably wouldn't have, just in terms of the free writing and getting into nonfiction and everything else, and experience with journaling. And I imagine that helps to just get the stuff out of your head, out. So how often do you lean on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I definitely write through feelings a lot, and it's often things that I never show anybody and don't intend to show people. It's just getting it out and on paper is wildly therapeutic for me, and I think it is for a lot of people. I taught my free writing journaling lesson at a women's shelter after my second novel came out, because I had partnered with them, because the character I was speaking about before, who cut herself, she was escaping an abusive situation. And so I explained to the women that, I wanted them to freely write their feelings and get them out. And then we ripped it up.
No.
And like nobody, like they reread their own writing, but then we all ripped them up, and it was very cathartic. And sometimes I think that's super, super valuable, just to put those words down and then rip it up and throw it away. Or if you have a safe place to burn it. Like,
yeah. It's, this tends to be a pinball machine for a lot of people. And
Mhm.
so when those negative thoughts start happening and everything, and it just starts rattling around, and then all of a sudden it's just louder and louder, and it's just like a pinball machine with the dinging and the ball flying everywhere and all that. Once it's out, like that noise can at least like lessen a little bit. And that's pretty awesome to be able to just have that skill and do that. Now, obviously, I can't ask you for like a total lesson on free writing some emotions down, but I am curious, like just to help somebody that might be watching at some point, that's struggling with that. Like, do you have a piece of advice in terms of like, okay, I've got a lot of negative thoughts and it's really toxic and I need to eject these somehow. Like, what do I do?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And I would say just get it out and don't worry about which thought is more important, or, I I tell people that it's kind of like vomiting on the page.
Okay.
Just get it out. You're gonna feel better. It might be messy. Like
Fair. That's fair.
yeah, don't there's no judging. So like just get it out.
Yeah.
Um and for people who really have trouble, like um what's the word I'm looking for? Uh kind of stopping that editor in their head, the ones who like pause and are like, is this right? I will suggest that they use a word processor and turn the ink to, or the words, the text to white so they can't see it while they're typing.
Oh, nice. All right. Yeah. I haven't even thought about that, but yeah. So you just,
Yeah.
there's no going back to it. It's just, you got
You,
the thought out.
right. You're getting it out, and you
Right.
can't go back and like look at it and be like, should I have written that? Did I write that correctly or well? No. Turn it to white. You can kind of see the wavy lines because you're going to be misspelling things. That's fine.
Do I need to put a comma after the phrase "my own bullshit"? I'm not sure.
Exactly. Exactly. Like you just just
Yeah.
get it out.
Unfortunately, that's exactly how I would do it. I would be editing it like after one sentence, like I don't know, like I don't, it just sounds
Yeah.
weird. Like, oh geez, that's terrible.
Yeah. So that's wildly helpful to just make it so you can't do that.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then just let the thoughts and then delete it afterwards.
Mhm.
Empty the trash can, do the
Yeah.
whole thing. Yeah,
If you want to look at it and read it, you can, but if you don't, you also don't have to.
yeah, dwelling on it's probably not the point. I mean, really, it's just to eject it from your head, to allow some more positive thoughts in there.
Mhm.
That is fascinating. So, what about what about pulling yourself kind of out of a creative funk? Is there anything that in particular works for you? We talked about obviously 5 minutes blank page, take a walk, change something up, push-ups, burpees, just chase the dog through the house or something like that.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that's for you that's like a just some kind of a therapeutic move for yourself where it's like, I'm not feeling terribly creative or I'm in a little bit of a funk. How do I get myself out of this?
Mhm. Um, yeah, usually like I want to write, but I'm like in that funk. I'm a huge fan of writing prompts and things like that. So be like, okay, well, this is something to kind of jumpstart my
Yeah,
brain, jumpstart my creativity, but it's not something that I created out of thin air.
right.
Um, so yeah, writing prompts can be helpful. Fun little writing exercises.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that works. My debut novel, all 85,000 words of it came from a card that was a writing prompt. It just said, "What is the oldest thing that you own?" And then next thing I know, I've got urban fantasy, 85,000. Like, I don't know how this happened, but like, okay. And it does work when you have those, and you never know. And some little prompt like that is just going to end up turning into a story,
Yeah.
or something that you add into somewhere. Like, it can be so valuable. I think a lot of authors, they sort of get afraid of like I don't want to waste my words on something that I'm not going to publish, or something along those lines. But it's like, there's more to it than that. There's an entire, again, this creative process. There's more to
Yeah.
it. Um,
I kind of think about it as like, well, you still go to the gym and, do exercises, even though it's not part of the marathon you're running.
right. And you don't
Like,
see gains after one day.
Yeah, like
Right.
those exercises as like just training.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so I want you to think about some things or experiences that tend to inspire you to create,
Mhm.
and just talk about a little bit about what those might be. Like, what is like the muse, the inspiration? What is it that has happened to you, or that you've thought of that's like, yeah, I gotta write.
Mhm. I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but I think like I have a lot of feelings.
Yeah,
Like, writing really helps me to manage those. I do have a manuscript right now that I'm querying that I wrote in 8 months, and it came from my fears about my son starting public school, and the book is centered around a school shooting event.
oh goodness, yeah,
So tons and tons of feelings. I've had beta readers tell me that they could not continue to read it because it was stressing them out, and I
for sure.
totally understood. I was like, protect your peace. I get it. My query letter for it was too much for a few people. Um, so I think just like my feelings, just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
was that is just like is the reason that I continue to write, because I've also had a lot of people tell me like you really captured this feeling that I've had
Right.
well, and I think that I mean that's what I love about books, and so that's what I wanted to do in my own for other people.
So now, writing with a child.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said 6, 7 years old, somewhere around there?
7 soon, yeah.
Okay, so your debut novel was 2020, so you're talking like toddler, like just we're full on toddler when that's going on. What was that like?
Um, so he was 2.5 when it came out. I do not remember writing the last third of it. I was just like, I know that I did because
Oh,
it
yeah.
came after like a certain conversation I had early in my pregnancy. I was like, oh, okay, I need to add some more. I don't know how I wrote that last part. I don't remember at all. But it was a work in progress for like 10 years before that. So I had started it before he was even um, around. And it wasn't until like about 7 years in though that I was like, oh, I'm going to make this into like a full finished novel. I'm going to
Okay.
do this. So I had a lot of time to kind of like get ready.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
the publication process with a small child during COVID was it was a lot, but I was already a stay-at-home parent. I stayed at
Mhm.
home full time with him for the first 5.5 years of his life.
Excellent. Yeah.
Um, so I I didn't have a lot of time, but I had a lot of flexibility in my schedule.
Sure, sure. Yep.
So like wasn't a lot of free time, but I made it work somehow. I
Yeah.
have no
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you had to make it work at 10 or 11 p.m., you got to make it work at 10 or 11 p.m. Um,
exactly.
did your creative process change pre-child to post-child, and like kind of how?
I think pre-child, I definitely had more of that ritual. Like, okay, I'm going to sit down with my coffee in this space and
Right.
make it nice and calming, and I know I'm going to have exactly, an hour and a half.
Yep.
And now it's like, wait, open the laptop. I'm sitting on a bed. Type for 20 minutes. Go.
Ay, ay, ay. I wish I could do that. Kudos to you. I spend 20 minutes just looking at what I wrote before and being like, what the hell was I thinking there? And just like trying to, like it takes me, I tell people it's like kind of like steering like a giant ship. Like I have to turn left well before I actually want to turn left, to get it going. But once it's going, then it just like kind of keeps like it's on its own. The momentum's all there. That's that's pretty neat. So personal life does affect, obviously, with kids, like they're the priority and you just got to work around it, the best you can. um so you had mentioned a couple times just like the emotional states, and that's something I would like to dip into. Just, do you find it, is there anything you find more difficult than creating when you're like is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it anger? Like, are there ones that seem easier to be able to get out, or like how do you navigate being creative when those are the emotions that are going on?
Hmm. Um, I try. What I try to do with my writing is to kind of like harness those and put them into the characters,
Mhm.
kind of so that I think it gives me a sort of control over
Okay.
those emotions. If I've
Mm.
taken them from myself, I put them into these characters in situations that I've created and I kind of have some control over.
For sure.
Even though sometimes they like take the reins and start running. But I technically gave them those reins. So it's not quite like life where
Right.
everything's a surprise sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I really try to make those emotions real for the characters and what they're experiencing, and that kind of helps me to.
It helps to navigate it. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So let me ask you this: was there ever a time where you were very frustrated with something that you were creating, or it's not working for you, or anything like that? And what did you do?
Hmm. Um, yeah, like I said, for my first novel, I don't remember writing the last third because after beta readers got it, they were like, okay, cool, where's the end? And I was like, right here? And they were like, no.
Mm. Right.
They were like, no, you can't, no. I was like, oh, well, shit, that's where I was planning to end
Exactly.
it. um, so I had to kind of just sit with that and think about, like, first of all, do I want to take their advice because ultimately it's my book?
For
Um,
sure.
but enough people were giving me the same feedback that I was like, okay, I do
Yeah.
want to take this advice, but I don't really know how. Um, so I kind of had to sit with it and say, okay, am I going to just continue from where it is? Am I going to do like a time jump? What makes sense? Where do I want these characters to go? Um, and I think because again I was pregnant and I don't really remember writing the last part. What I did was I jumped ahead 5 years and was
Oh,
like,
nice.
"This is where they are now," and I wrote like this epically long epilogue, um,
Nice.
and I think it turned out okay.
That's a way to wrap it up and put a bow on it for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
they at
That's
least had some more closure, I guess.
Yeah, and that is definitely the advantage of beta readers is when you start to aggregate that feedback and you're like, okay, like, if I have 5 beta readers, I think I had 5 roughly on my debut. And what I actually did, just because I'm like a nerd about this and like, I'm into troubleshooting and everything, it's just what I do for like a job, is I sent them what was essentially a questionnaire, you know,
Mhm.
just not too specific, but specific enough for the things that I was really concerned about. And when everybody came back and question number 4 had them all confused, now I know that like whatever that was in question number 4, like that's probably going to need the attention. You
Right.
know, if one person was like, yeah, this didn't make sense to me, but everybody else was like, oh my God, that was so cool. I'm like, all right, like that's just Bill. Like, I don't have to worry, it's, and
Yeah,
it's fun.
that's
You know,
part of being a writer, like figuring out like, is it you or is it me?
yeah, there's a lot of that.
Constant like, and sort
Yeah.
of something I work with students on too. It's like, just because I give you this feedback, it's ultimately your
Right.
essay. Like, and they're like, but you're the expert. I'm like, in writing, but if you're writing a personal narrative,
Yeah.
that's you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I've tried it both ways. My last one, I didn't use any betas. I was like, you know what, this is my story to tell, and I'm just going to do it my way. And I really don't care how somebody's going to perceive it, because like I felt good, and I'm like, I got it wrapped up. Like, I'm all right with this. Let's see what happens. Like I don't know if I can trust myself to like do that, but like you don't know until you try, kind of thing. But there's a difference, and especially something like even with the nonfiction, like you are concerned about the market to a degree, so like you want to make sure that the feedback is correct, and you're not, you're not missing things like that. So let me ask you this one, and then we're gonna play some Pitch Storm.
Okay.
And we're gonna put that pantser brain to the test for sure.
That's the part that I'm like the most worried about. I'm like, what if my brain just
we'll make it work. It's fine. But let me ask this one: if there was anything that you could change creatively about how you work, whether it's efficiency or flexibility or your output or whatever, is there something that you would change about? It was something that you would change about yourself.
I mean, it would kind of be nice if I had a longer like attention span. Like I know some people are like, I sit down and can write for 5 hours, and like,
no,
I cannot, and I'm not gonna like strive for that, but that would be nice. That would be great. I mean, I guess I would have to remember I have a child, but think about like, in 20 years when
right.
he doesn't need me and I'm still writing, hopefully. It would be nice if I could just be like, oh yeah, I sat down and wrote for 5 hours and turned out how many thousands of words, but that's not me, and that's okay.
No, I can count that. I can count those days on one hand for myself for sure. Like I've had them. And they're great. They're exhausting. And then like, I won't write for 3 weeks afterwards. Like they got like, there's a limited amount of words. They just come out, and then it's like, all right, I'm good for a while. Like everybody's different that way. It's just a matter of harnessing it, I think, more than anything. But yeah, I totally get that. I get that sort of, I get that sort of imposter feeling, or that anxiety when I'm talking to authors and they're like, well, I sit down, I write 1,000 words a day.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's great. That's really nice. The best I've written.
Doesn't necessarily mean they're great words either.
No, that's true. That's true.
Not a judgment. Like I write a bunch of words a day that I never use.
Yeah. Like, well, I thought about my characters once or twice in the last 2 weeks. Does that count? Like, I don't know, but we find a way. I think that's more than anything, is we just find a way to be creative. All right. So you're ready to just crack open that brain and see what happens?
Yes.
All right. This is the most exciting part, because something's going to exist 5 minutes from now that has never existed before.
I love that.
To me, that's just really, really cool, just to see how brains work that way. So I'm going to go ahead and pop open the wheel here, and let's see. I think I figured out how to make this work before, so we can just kind of hang out. There he is. There it is. All right, good. All right. So a little intro for anybody that's watching and hasn't seen this before. Give me just one moment. Okay, next up, we're going to play some Pitch Storm. This little exercise provides us a live, real-time look into our guest's creative brain. This is a fully random event, no hints, no notes shared, neurons firing at a randomized prompt to create something from absolutely nothing at this very moment. Guests are given a random character, a random plot, and must pitch these two things as a story as detailed as their heart desires. Once the 30-second pitch is up, you get 2 random wrinkles thrown in, and you have to re-pitch the story with the wrinkles included. We'll rate the pitch afterwards and just kind of have some fun with it. Heckling is permitted, welcomed, mandated, and you get 2 mulligans. So if one of those spins happens and you're like, nope, not going to do that one, which is fine, because there's some weird shit in there, let me tell you. Okay. Because I bought every single deck that they made, and I just like threw it all in. So like we've got creatures, but we also have rom-com in there. So like, who knows what's going to happen, but that's kind of the brilliant fun of it all. So I have these split up as characters A, B, plots A, B, and then the wrinkles, the notes from the meddling producer. So the only random thing, and they're all randomized within each wheel, but which one would you like to pick, A or B? A? All right. So our A character, let's see what we get. I need game show music, better game show music. An old wizard searching for an apprentice.
Okay, should I be writing this down, or will it stay on the screen?
No, I'll remind you. We'll keep it up. It's all good. Old wizard searching for an apprentice, and plots A or B?
B.
B it is. Let's go there. Oh, here comes the plot. in a series of romantic misadventures. All right. So, an old wizard searching for his apprentice in a series of romantic misadventures. So, I'm going to go ahead and give you 30 seconds, right? And pitch me a story. Let's come up with something on the spot, right? Off you go.
Okay. So we're going modern day wizard, and he's looking for his apprentice, and he's using dating apps. He's using Tinder. He's using Hinge, and he hopes that by swiping on all these people and going on all these dates, he is actually going to find his apprentice. And the people are very confused about what he is doing.
All right. Yeah, I imagine if you're swiping and you see an old wizard on one of those, like you're gonna be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Swipe
Like,
right? I don't
get
know.
a few cosplayers who are like, oh, I thought we were like just doing a fun thing. Oh no, you're serious.
Okay. All right. So we have the structure of his story. We have an old wizard, and he decided to take it to Hinge, and he's overrun by cosplayers for his romantic adventures / apprentice. All right. So let's throw a wrinkle in here and see what happens.
All right.
This will make it really interesting. You got some stuff to work with there, though. Okay. What if every character was a college freshman? Oh,
Okay. So
right in your wheelhouse, right? I mean, you're working with these people. Okay. Off you go.
okay, so we're gonna make the wizard less old. Like we're gonna make him less old. And yeah, set on a
Really weird.
campus. Yeah, make him at least look less old. I don't.
Yeah.
We'll go with like a Edward Cullen thing, like
There it is. Yep.
he's hundreds of years old, but he doesn't look hundreds of years old. And so yeah, these college freshmen they're into it, but also weirded out by it. And he really wants to find his apprentice. So he is open. He's got his Hinge profiles open to any and everybody. So that's who he's meeting. That's what he's doing.
Swiping right for spell.
Becomes the most popular guy on this college campus.
Oh man, I'm glad the first thing you did was change his age, because that was going to get really weird.
Yeah.
So let's go. Let's add one more wrinkle into this thing. I like it. I'm digging it so far. I think we got a good structure for his story here. Let's set this during the Iraq War. Sure, why not? Do you want to mulligan that one?
Like just the time frame of the Iraq War, or like in like combat zone.
Affected by. Let's say affected by.
Okay, affected by. So his apprentice, he meets the apprentice. Somehow he magically knows this is his apprentice, but he has enlisted and is going to be shipped out.
Okay.
And so the wizard has to convince him that he's not insane, that this guy's actually meant to be his apprentice, and that he needs to stay. He cannot go to war.
I like it.
Okay.
All right. We're a few seconds early, but I think that's a good spot to just like cut it and be like, you know what? I would say this is getting approved. This could be a mini series. You know, I think you got a lot of comedy potential for a wizard on Hinge, for sure.
I can see this. I've got some ideas. Like
there's definitely something to that. That's a really good mix. Yeah. So maybe he had to change his own appearance, because like if it's just a bunch of college freshmen and then here comes Dumbledore on Hinge, yeah. No. We're all right not to go there.
I'm not wizard who's hundreds of years old. But.
Exactly. So I say, and Logan, it's like people enjoying this in the chat. I ain't got time for tests. I have to cast Fireball. Yes. Of course. Swipe right for spells. All right. So let's do another round. That wasn't too bad.
No. Okay. Yeah, I got that.
All right.
Okay. So we're erasing all of that, right?
It's all erased. And do you want to go with a character A or character B on this one?
Let's go character B.
Let's do character B. All right, let's see what we get. Your character is a noble barbarian from a distant land.
Okay.
Sword and sorcery vibes. Plots A or B?
A.
A. And what is the situation for your noble barbarian? Fights to stop an evil cult from summoning their god to Earth. I mean, that kind of works, right?
Okay, yeah, like those go well together. I don't know if that's really in my wheelhouse, but I'm gonna give it a shot.
All right, that's the right attitude. All right, so yeah, take 30 seconds and you know what, you can make it a rom-com or whatever if you want. Like, it doesn't even matter. So just go ahead, just do whatever you want with it.
All right, so noble barbarian from a distant land. He needs to stop this cult from summoning their god. So he goes on a quest.
Yep. We're getting there. We got to pull it. Come on.
To find a relic.
There you go. Okay. Yep. What's the relic look like?
A giant gem.
Okay.
And this is going to, he has to shove the giant gem into the leader's heart to stop the cult. If he kills the leader, he kills everybody. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Into the leader's heart in order to destroy the entire cult. Like, one thing, kill the head, kill everybody.
All right. Not your wheelhouse, but we got it out. Like, that's what's most important, right?
It took a little more effort, but I got there. I wasn't gonna let it go.
No, we got the Conan vibes. I like it. A little bit of like Indiana Jones type of thing, Kalima, like that whole thing, right? So let's go ahead and throw in a wrinkle to this, because it may end up getting silly or ridiculous or whatever. Let's see what happens. We'll do an A and a B. Let's see. First wrinkle is, let's add an invisible talking penguin that only the main character can see. Well, that didn't get weird fast. All right. So you've got the barbarian fighting to stop the summoning of the evil cult, and now we've got an invisible talking penguin that talks to the barbarian. And go. What do we got?
All right. So the penguin was the holder of this gem, and so I almost called him Conan.
Right.
So Conan goes and finds the gem, but the penguin follows him back. And the barbarian's like super mad, and he's like, I don't need this penguin following me while I'm gonna go shove this gem into this guy's heart. And then he finally gets back to the cult, and he starts referencing the penguin and realizes that nobody can see it. And so they start to think he's insane. And yeah.
Okay. All right.
I wanted something else to come out, and it just didn't.
That's okay. We're gonna do one more wrinkle and see where it lands, right?
Okay.
Last spin. You've got a mulligan too, so if it's not the one you want, we can skip past it. Let's make it a musical. Describe some of the epic song and dance numbers, maybe with titles. Oh, I can't wait for this.
Okay.
All right. So Conan and the Invisible Penguin and Shoving the Heart and the Cult, the musical.
Yeah. So he realizes finally that nobody else can see this penguin, and he is trying to shove this gem into the cult leader's heart. But the penguin is actually kind of like his conscience and is trying to get him not to, because he doesn't fully understand, because he's like a very Disney-like character. I'm thinking like Olaf. So he's just like happy all the time. And so I'm thinking like the penguin is doing like a Jiminy Cricket type Olaf, like let your conscience be your guide. But I'm trying to think of song titles because that was part of it. All I'm thinking about though is the song title "Give Me Back My Damn Gemstone."
Okay.
That's not really in the vibe of where I was going with it, but
all right though. I mean, it's Disney-ish.
I don't know if it is, but
maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, this reminds me of you've seen Monsters Inc., right?
yes,
Where's
like
put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. Like when he just like came up with a dance number, like it's just yeah,
yes,
we gotta put that,
though, like that's
yeah,
kind of the vibe I was going for.
put that
And
gem back where it came from, or so help me. Yeah,
yeah,
and this penguin.
yeah,
No, I'd say wonderful job, wonderful job all the way around on both of those.
stronger, but
Uh, yeah, see, Logan had mentioned it went from Conan to Dave the Barbarian, which is dope. Yep. Philip is suggesting perhaps we have the backstory for the Ice King from Game of Thrones. A little weird, but like I could see that. Yeah.
it gives him depth. So we didn't really
Yes,
know the Ice King.
that's right. I have to the beat of we got another one to the beat of Chili's baby back rib. I want my gemstone back. Yeah, we could do that too.
I like that.
Yeah. I have this theory, just separate from all of that, that you can make any unwatchable movie imminently more watchable if you just add the words "on ice" to the end of it. So if you just think of just like whatever, waiting to exhale on ice, or Schindler's List. Well, maybe not Schindler's List, but you know what I mean. Like it's like there's some that it could work for sure.
Mhm.
There's nothing that ends in on ice. But anyway, see, now thank you, because that was epic, right? That's good. We get to peek in your brain and see those things firing, and it's nice to see some of those aha moments happen when you're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like this.
Yeah, and they're like pulling it out a little, like it's
Exactly
that's
that
what
little.
I got paid for. So I
But
try
it's
to.
it's just like we described earlier, though. Your intuition, like you see a little thread pop up, and then you just got to kind of pull on it. And what's the idea that's sitting in there? This is why I think just discussions on creativity are so fascinating anyway. Um,
Mhm.
because we're manifesting something in the real world just through speech, that was never there before.
Yeah.
Which is just like that's just a very human and very awesome thing to me. So thank you for that. But see, that wasn't as bad as you were making it out to be.
I was just worried. That's all.
Right.
My brain was gonna shut off, or I don't know. I was gonna say something wildly in left field because that happens sometimes.
I mean, that's okay too. Yeah, that's all right too. That's those don't be afraid of those moments for sure. Well, thank you, Lana, because this has been a lovely evening, and really nice getting to know you and dig into some of these topics with you for sure, getting to know your creativity and all that. I'm going to give you another, the floor is yours for another 30 seconds or so, and just remind everybody who you are, where to get your stuff and all that kind of thing. So just talk about whatever you want to talk about. Off you go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun, and like I said, I was kind of nervous, but it was super super fun. I'm Lana Orndorff. I write literary fiction with a little bit of genre in there. I've got 2 novels out. They're available on Amazon, Bookshop, wherever you can buy books. If you prefer indie bookstores, then it might not be on their shelves, but any indie bookstore can order it for you. So, yeah, and I love talking about creativity and pulling, people's ideas out. I do it with my students, but I create journals for kiddos. If anybody has a kid who's like learning to read or write, on one side there's like a picture that they can develop and create something from their brain. And then on the other side, there are lines so they can write a story about it.
Nice.
So it's like a prompt journal for kids who can't read yet.
Right.
But yeah, creativity is important. And if anybody ever wants to talk about it, I am available. You can DM me on Instagram, Twitter, all those fun things. And thank you so much, David.
Of course. Is there a social that you're typically more active on than others?
I'm probably most active on Instagram, but I've got or Instagram, also a little bit on Twitter, X,
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say Instagram mostly would be great. And I usually am posting things that I'm doing, like I'm in a couple weeks teaching a free writing workshop at Elgin Community College here in Chicagoland.
Nice.
So if anybody wanted information on that, they could go to my Instagram and
Perfect. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this one up, and then we'll say goodbye and all that kind of stuff. So give me just 1 second. And here we go, folks. Thank you for tuning in and spending some time with us tonight. Special thanks to Lana for being a great sport and wonderful guest. Highly encourage you to check out all of her work. Links to all the things are in the description of the video, YouTube, and Rumble, and on mirthquake.show. If you would be interested in being part of the Mirthquake community and a guest on the show, it's easy. Head over to mirthquake.show for all the details, and hopefully soon we'll be prying open your brain and throwing it out to the internet for everyone to see. And also come hang out with us on the Discord, and you're on there from time to time, popping in and all that. So it's a nice place to just have conversations and build a community. And any closing thoughts? We're good?
Yeah, I'm good. Everybody.
All right. We're good. Appreciate everybody that popped into the chat and all that to watch and say hi. So I'm going to close this off, but stay on with me for just a minute, all right? And have a good night, everybody.